What's up, YouTube? Capital G here. We got some dankness for you guys to check out. This is the Mayakashi deck out FTK. It's a really interesting and really stupid deck that probably shouldn't work, but it actually uses one of Mayakashi's biggest problems and turns it into a strength. I said in my Mayakashi breakdown video that one of the biggest problems with this archetype was the fact that since you kind of climb up the ladder when you synchro summon and you need those monsters in the graveyard to basically work yourself backwards down the ladder when your synchros on field are destroyed to summon the synchros from the graveyard, it means that you have to run a ton of them in the extra deck. In fact, you see right here, he doesn't run any other monsters. Like the only monsters he runs are the Mayakashi synchros and the one link monster, and it doesn't really leave you any opportunities for, you know, a whole bunch of like splashable good link cards like Unicorn and Borload and all that stuff, because your extra deck is just full of these Mayakashis. Well, there is now an FTK that you can pull off with this deck, and it's because of the way Mayakashi works. So the card that you're going to need is Soul Absorbing Bone Tower. This is a really old card in Yu-Gi-Oh! And honestly, this card is kind of useless outside of just this one play. It says if you control another zombie monster, your opponent cannot target this card for attacks. That's irrelevant. The turn you summon this, you probably should win the duel. If not, just go ahead and scoop it up because you probably won't. The important part is the mill effect. It says each time a zombie monster is special summoned, send the top two cards of your opponent's deck to the graveyard. Well, the reason that this effect is so OP in this deck is because really this card right here, the beautiful Mayakashi Daki, every time that you summon one of your new synchro monsters, that's going to mill two cards from your opponent, and every time you're going to summon Daki back from your graveyard, that's going to mill another two cards. So when you're synchro summoning, you're basically just taking your opponent's deck and you're throwing it into the graveyard. And considering they have a link monster that opens up two extra monster zones, as long as you completely go through your link or your synchro monsters, your opponent will not have a deck. And zombies can run things like not just Monster Reborn and Soul Charge. Well, synchro decks run Soul Charge in general, but you can also run like Book of Life. So let me go ahead and roll this, and this is a little bit of a scuff duel because his opponent is playing some super table 500 deck. I don't know what the fuck this is. He also just passed his turn one, and that was a mistake because he's not going to get a turn two. 1 day apiece, hand destruction to try and fix his hand. He gets Mizuki in the graveyard. He also gets Daki in the graveyard. Both of those cards want to be in the graveyard, so it works out fine for him. Foolish Burial, and then he's going to just go ahead. He's going to use his normal summon on the Bone Tower, and he also has Book of Life in his hand. Mizuki is going to get himself the Rickshaw. This card is going to summon one, and obviously that's going to make him actually mill two. He gets the Daki. He's going for the link. He's going to mill two. Since Daki was sent to the graveyard and a monster was special summoned while Daki was in the graveyard, Daki's going to special summon itself. That's going to mill two more cards as well. Now he's going to use this on the Hajun, and Hajun is going to special summon one from the deck. That's going to mill two. Also, Hajun being special summoned is going to mill two. And at this point, all you need to do is just keep summoning your synchro monsters. And your opponent, he had 34 cards at the beginning of this play. He will have 0 cards at the end. As he goes into these synchro monsters, he's going to mill two. And then every time he summons a synchro, Daki's going to summon itself from the graveyard. And then he's going to continually synchro summon up. Each time, he's basically losing 4 cards. And once you do that rotation a couple of times, your opponent is just out of resources. So as Daki comes back, mill two, goes into a new synchro, mill two, Daki comes back, mill two, go into the level 7 synchro, mill two, Daki comes back again, mill two, go into the level 9 synchro, you're gonna mill two, Daki comes back for like the 5 billionth time, mill two, go for the level 11, mill two, Daki comes back again, so on and so forth until your opponent runs out of cards. And he only has like 6 cards left. So again, you can just do this with like Soul Charge. Now his opponent did actually scoop, but you can see right here he was only on the level 5 with 4 cards. So once Daki comes back, he would have been down to 2. Then he would have went into his level 7. Then he wouldn't have had any cards left in his deck, which meant when Daki came back off of the level 7, he would have decked out. And again, it wouldn't have actually stopped until he went into the level 11 and Daki was summoned off of that. So he would have milled, I don't know, something like 8 more cards on top of what he actually milled. So even if you don't get like the perfect ideal setup, there is still avenues for you to deck your opponent out without getting everything. But this could actually be, maybe this is the best way to run the Mayakashi deck. Like Forget running it as a beatdown deck. Forget running it as a control deck. Just run it as an FTK or lose deck. Seriously, you go first, win the die roll. If you lose, you just scoop, and then hopefully you can win the second duel and troll your opponent. So I will go ahead and show you guys the deck list really quickly, because a deck like this in FTK, you got to see the deck list to really appreciate it. Okay, so this is what the deck looks like on paper, and it's pretty self-explanatory. A lot of cards in here that you knew would be in here because we see them all the time when it comes to FTKs. Things like Into the Void. If you don't win turn one, forget about your hand and discarding it. It's irrelevant. You're not going to win the game anyways. Same thing can be said with something like Hand Destruction. You've seen that to use an Exodia and every other like Degenerate FTK. Things like Upstart Goblin, One Day Apiece, Light Points are irrelevant in this deck. Same thing when it comes to doing damage, because that's not your win condition. Your win con is decking your opponent out. Draw Muscle is interesting. It's to be used with the beautiful Mayakashi Daki. You're gonna summon this card over and over and over again, and you do generally summon it in defense mode. It does have 0 defense. Double Summon, I also think, is a card that's pretty good in here. If you don't happen to need it, you can discard it from like Dark Will Dealings, but you're going to need to get your soul absorbing Bone Tower on the field somehow, and if it's in your hand, you might need to like normal summon, I don't know, Hajun, and then also be able to get Bone Tower on the field. Now I gotta say, I was a little surprised that Soul Charge was not in this deck and that there were 3 Book of Life. I would probably swap out a Book of Life for a Soul Charge, because if you're going first with this deck, Book of Life does have the 100% requirement that you have to banish a card from, or excuse me, you have to banish a monster from your opponent's graveyard. If your opponent doesn't have any monsters in their graveyard, you actually cannot activate this card. Now there is a decent chance that your opponent will put a card in their graveyard, because you're going to be activating Dark World Dealings and Hand Destruction. There's a decent chance they'll just discard some random, crappy card that they don't need. It'll probably be like a monster or something like that. Just some monster that they probably don't think is going to be that important. You can banish that, but I don't know. Soul Charge just seems like it's too good in this deck. I mean, especially if you're activating Dealings and Hand Destruction and you're getting rid of like 3 or 4 monsters in those turns, or excuse me, in that turn, just activating these cards like back to back. Being able to activate Soul Charge, pay half of your life points, just get back all those monsters. It's completely irrelevant to your life points, because you're either going to win turn 1 or you're going to lose turn 1. So don't think about anything after that. It's the reason you don't see any hand traps in here. It's the reason you don't see any other monsters in the extra deck that are not Mayakashi, and it's the reason that obviously no regular traps are in here. So this is just a fun little experimental deck. Honestly, I would have never thought about I never would have thought about a Mayakashi FTK, and this is not a card that I ever thought would have done anything. But as you've seen in the duel, you can pull it off. Like, you do special summon just so much in this deck that I believe he had to special summon 18 times to deck his opponent out turn 1, and that was incredibly achievable. So I'm just thinking Soul Charge, probably take out Book of Life, and just throw Soul Charge in here, and this is probably the 40 cards you're gonna run. So whatever you guys think, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already. Turn on that notification bell for daily videos.